Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome to the Hanging with Web show. I'm GW Pomicher. Thank you for logging on and tuning in. I don't know how you found us, but I got an idea. Hit subscribe and, as the kids say, smash the bell. That way, you'll be notified whenever we have an artist, author, filmmaker, musician, creative mind of any kind sitting here in the chair. Right now, we are at the Gallie Artworks Art Festival. It's a lot of art. A lot of art. And we're hanging out right now with author and Hanging with Web Show alumnus Rick Gangraw, the author of A High Price to Pay and Other and Sundry. We'll talk about that. That's what we're going to talk about, because it's been like 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's been about that.
Yeah, man. So, Rick, thanks for coming and hanging out with us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, well, we're just going to catch up. You guys don't mind, right? We're going to catch up. How you been, man?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah, how's it going?
Pretty good. I was just at the Arts Festival over there and the book signing, and had a lot of traffic yesterday, and it looks like a lot of traffic today as well. So
it's good. You know what? It is that one of the best things that we get to do as creative artists is go and gather together.
Yeah.
And share tips and tricks and stories with the other creators.
Yeah.
And meet readers, which is really awesome. Occasionally, we can sell a book.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like a thing. I know a lot of the authors are out there. That's not a thing, is it? And I'm like, yeah, that's a thing. We do that sometimes.
Yeah. It happens.
Yeah, it does happen. So let's talk about A High Price to Pay. Let's remind everybody what you've got going on here. Okay.
Okay.
So High Price to Pay.
So this is actually a story that started from my grandmother many years ago. She used to tell stories that her grandmother told her about our great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents, and great-great-great-grandparents that were in the Civil War. So they were in North Carolina, and so there were some interesting stories about them. One of them was a deserter and came home and hid in a haystack.
Wow.
Yeah, they talked about how bad they smelled and the body lice and stuff, as they were deserters and been on the run for several weeks, several months. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. And then they told other stories. One of them was a soldier from North Carolina that was in Pickett's Charge that went across Gettysburg on day 3 and survived and ended up having my great-grandfather.
Wow.
So it's a lot of history there. And I thought, I'm going to put these in a story and make it a fictional story, but it's based on fact. And unfortunately, my grandmother has passed away, so she didn't get to see the final results.
Huh?
But this is all based on the stories that she told us about our family. Yeah.
What an amazing treasure trove to have as a writer, as a fiction writer, to have those stories that are passed down at your fingertips, so that you can flesh them out and find literature inside of them.
That's right.
Which is awesome.
So it's a fictional story, but I put some of the facts that she told me about them into the story.
Oh,
and
wow.
I did a lot of research and traveled to the battlefields and walked around the battlefields and got a feel for different aspects of each one. And I included that in there as much as I could, too.
The research that a writer does is one of the most daunting tasks that you have. And trying to make sure that your period is historically accurate, things that you describe in clothing and things like that.
Yeah. And the heat on July 3rd in Pennsylvania.
I was going to say,
it was a hot day.
But the interesting thing is that you didn't just Google this stuff.
Oh,
you went to those locations.
Right. Yeah.
What was that like? Knowing your grandmother's stories and stepping onto the battlefield at Gettysburg.
Because you're standing in the same place where they stood, and all these other people stood, and many of them didn't come back. They were standing there. They walked across. They ended up getting killed. I went to Sharpsburg, and there's a ditch there where apparently there were so many people killed that it filled the ditch. You could walk all the way across this ditch without touching the ground.
Wow.
And it's pretty emotional to be there, and that's where one of my wife's great-great-grandfather was shot and injured. He wasn't killed there, but he was injured there.
Wow.
And, just walking in those areas, it's hallowed ground.
It really is.
Yeah.
For anybody, and people who have gone to Gettysburg and walked through, it's emotional for all of us to be in the presence of that history.
Yeah.
But when you have a personal connection, when you've had those stories that your grandma told you, passed down to you, and you're walking on that ground, there's something exceptionally poignant about that. To know this is where great-great-grandpa, fought and was wounded or died or whatever.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Again, back to the research. A historical fiction book is a lot of research, a lot of homework, a lot of things that you knew,
but it's stuff that I enjoyed. You didn't. I enjoyed it tremendously, though, because I'm a history buff.
Most interesting thing that you learned that you didn't know.
We actually found some records that showed that my wife's great-grandfather, or great-great-grandfather, that was injured at Sharpsburg, he ended up being captured at, he surrendered with Lee at Appomattox. We didn't know that. That was never passed down in the family. But as we're researching him and got his Civil War records, we found out that he was one of those few people that surrendered with Lee. And that was pretty interesting.
Talk about an incredible day.
Yeah.
It's been reenacted, it's been put on film, it's been put in every book. Yeah. It's a day we all know about.
That's right.
And to know that there was somebody in the family that was standing right there.
And so I tried to actually put that in there too.
I'm drawn to remembering Grant's speech there as Lee surrendered when the soldiers found out they were going to get to go home. And you know, Grant wasn't going to take them all prisoner and whatever. He'd go home, boys.
Yeah.
And I'm drawn to that, to think that you had a family member that was standing there hearing that.
Yeah.
And you know, after a bloody and arguably the bloodiest war in American history.
Yeah.
And to be standing there finding out you get to go home and it's over.
That's right. After all those years of
fighting and toil and
horrors. They saw horrors.
It was a different world.
Yeah.
And we oftentimes there's no way to ever compare one war to the next to the next to the next, because the world changes so much in between. But you're talking about a time when a wound to the leg was fatal.
It's fatal, right? Right. Yeah.
And so that's just amazing. And then you're walking those battlefields and those grounds, and that's fantastic.
Yeah. Now,
what are readers saying?
I've heard nothing but positive things about it.
That's awesome.
And it's funny because my publisher does the artwork on it. He figures out the covers, and when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's great. And then somebody said, oh no, that's a Confederate flag. There's going to be a lot of flack about that. And I thought, oh no, that's probably right. But then I thought, you know, there's a lot of history there. My family, they didn't own slaves. They were just poor sharecroppers. They just, you know, so they weren't fighting for slavery like I guess the Southern politicians were trying to push that. Oh, you can't change our way of life and our slavery and all that. But my family had nothing to do with that, and most of the soldiers were drafted into that.
Most people don't realize that soldiers fight the wars.
Yeah.
They're not the guys picking the fight.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you lived in North Carolina and you're a poor sharecropper and you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of things, and you're sharecropping on a wealthier person's land. And so when those conflicts occur, and they can be about, you know, big topics, freedom and slavery, you know, but that's not what it's about to you. It's about your neighbor.
Yeah.
It's about the guy that you rent your land from. It's about those things.
Yeah.
And they're telling you this is the right thing to do. And again, not everybody believes them. Some people will sleep in a hay bale and stank up the place because not everybody believes in the cause.
Yeah, that's right.
But
so I tried to put a lot of that in there
that's
too.
amazing.
So you see the emotion of the guy that's in there. At first, he's all gung ho. You know, he's going to fight against these northern invaders, and then he realizes, hey, what am I fighting for?
One of my favorite things to tell people about that period in history is that one of the necessities of our Civil War had very little to do with slavery.
Yeah.
The slavery issue was what kind of codified the country around what they thought was an injustice or a just, you know, war.
Yeah.
But really, the United States, that was our first test if we were going to be a nation.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the fact that we are a nation of rebels. Our nation was founded because we rebelled against our nation.
Yeah.
And to see if that nation that we had founded could withstand the same kind of rebellion was a true test of whether or not we were going to be what we set out to be.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you have a nation of rebels, they tend to rebel. And,
imagine that.
Yeah. And so when you're rebelled against, can you withstand that? I mean, the mightiest force in the history of the world at that time, the British Empire, could not withstand the rebellion of the United States.
Yeah.
Can the United States withstand a rebellion of the southern states?
That's right. And for years, it was like a touch and go. You didn't know what was going to happen.
You really didn't. And so it answered a question for us. Can we endure?
Yeah.
And, you know, Lincoln put that so beautifully at Gettysburg, and so many other poets and writers have. Guys, look to the artist, because we chronicle things in the most eloquent ways that we can find.
Yeah.
And those are the questions that were answered for many of these young people who went off to war was, you know, can we endure as a nation?
Yeah.
Will we be fractured? And if we can be fractured into individual states, can we be fractured into individual counties? I mean, where does the line?
Really, where
where
does
is
it
the
end?
line?
Yeah.
And the Civil War answered those questions in a bloody and horrific way.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from behind the camera, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at. Oh, I like that. That's great. When we first talked, we talked about escape from his past. That was what we were talking about way back in the day. So back then they wanted to know, writing a completely different genre, right? You know, how was that transition? What were the major things?
Well, you know, it's funny because my wife is a romantic and she loves to hear the romance. So I actually have a romantic section in here. The main character gets injured all the time and he gets to go to these nurses and he's enamored by these nurses. So,
okay, well,
so there's romance in this story. In the middle of all this fighting and all that, the guy gets injured and sure enough he falls in love with a nurse, somebody who's nursing him back, and so there's some romance in there.
You know, war, peace, it doesn't really matter. Some themes are universal.
Exactly.
Carry everywhere you go.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you should say that. When I wrote my first book, it was pure noir story.
Oh, right.
It was just right down to the bones. It was the Bogart coming into the screen, and Dina was one of the people who read it with me and said, was giving me pointers. First thing she said, just like your wife, where's the romance? Where is it?
Yeah.
I wrote one chapter. I am extremely proud that I was able to write the one chapter. I'm not proud of the chapter.
Right.
Because it's the worst writing I think I've ever done in my life.
But the fact that you did it and you pleased her.
But I did it.
Yeah.
I pleased her.
Yeah,
I put
that's
it
all
in
that
there.
counts, right?
My sister, I don't know how you do it. I can't write. There was a seminar in one of the conferences that I attended with the show.
Okay.
And they were doing, how to, the elements that build a better love story and love scene, and to build a chapter.
Right.
And I don't think I couldn't get through the first 10 minutes. And it wasn't a lack of interest, guys. It was just my personal sensibilities were so. I was just like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't. I will write blood and guts and murder and mayhem, but for some reason, the most basic of human drives, can't write it for crap.
Yeah. Leave that for the romance writers.
I do. I leave that for the romance writers. God
this is
bless
about
you.
as close as I can get.
That's as close as you can get right there, yeah. So, look, yes, we do listen. If it's on the honey-do list, it gets done. Eventually. Don't have to bother us every 6 months.
Right. Yeah,
we'll get to it. Rick, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me here again.
Check out The High Price to Pay. We're going to put links down below to all Rick's work so you can find him online. You can check him out over on our social medias. You can see stuff from him all the time as it goes in. Check out our Hanging with Web Show Creators group where Rick and a bunch of our other artists and things can hang out there on Facebook. So in the meantime, let's thank our partners and our friends at Krypton Radio, Gene Turnbow and his team over there, our great friend B and her team at Hearts Helping Others of Central Florida, our friend Josh Bauer for all the art that's on our set right now. Thank you so much for all your support. Indie Original, Space Coast Comics, and of course, the original, the OG sponsor of the Hanging with Web Show, Famous Faces and Funnies. Thank you to Rick Shea and his whole team. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to Rick for coming on out. We've been hanging out with Rick Gangraw, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, log on, tune in, and see who we're hanging with next. Awesome. Rick, thank you so much.
Great.
Man, that was
Thanks.
awesome.
I appreciate that.